So guys, it feels like 10 years since the second Trump term began, and I do not mean that in a bad way at all. It is actually completely the opposite. He has done so much in the last 40 days that it has been nearly impossible to keep track unless you are literally glued to X, unless you are glued to C-SPAN, which unfortunately most of us have lives, so I know we're not doing that. So I personally have felt like I've kind of been in a washing machine for the last 40 days, just being bounced around, catching bits and pieces of the news and trying to follow along because literally, guys, this man is moving a mile a minute. And so I think it is time for a recap. You guys have been asking for it. You've been saying, Brett, why haven't you talked about Trump? I saw some comments that they were like, Brett, Trump has done something like 75 executive orders. You haven't talked about one, which cracked me up because I literally think you could do an entire episode about each individual executive order, but obviously we don't have the time for that. I'm doing these longer shows now, so I'm going to attempt to mush all of this into one episode. I want to get into that, get into all of the incredible things he's done. And obviously, we also need to talk about my favorite funny Trumpisms from the last 40 days. We obviously have to talk about Zelenskyy and that now infamous meeting in the Oval Office. So this will not be all-encompassing in the slightest, which means that we will have many more episodes about Trump in the future. And why wouldn't we? Because the man is going to be president for the next 4 years, God willing, which means we're going to have a ton of great content, lots of things to talk about. And also, guys, on top of all of that and that very important recap, we also need to talk about Gen Z and Gen Z's response to all of this because, spoiler alert, it actually isn't positive at all, and it's kind of concerning, and I want to understand why. Before we dive into today's episode, though, make sure that you are subscribed to this new channel, that you like the video if you enjoy it, and of course, if you want to stay up to date on every single episode of The Red Cooper Show, make sure to ring that notification bell. And of course, if you're interested in joining my subscriber-only platform, Cooper Confidential, I have the link right here and in the description below. That is for ad-free episodes, an exclusive subscriber-only newsletter, and weekly Dear Brett advice videos. My merch is also linked below, so lots of goodies for you in the description. All right, so obviously, we cannot talk about Trump's first official month in office without talking about executive orders, because executive orders have really been the theme of the last 40 days. And as you guys probably know, if you were watching the inauguration like I was, maybe some of you guys were also there, Trump signed a ton on the day of his inauguration at his inaugural parade, which ended up being moved inside, so it was kind of like an inaugural rally. But just take a look at this clip in case you missed it.
Why don't you say what I'm signing?
Sure. The first item that President Trump is signing is the rescission of 78 Biden-era executive actions, executive orders, presidential memoranda, and others.
I also just love that he did this in front of tens of thousands of fans, because to hear the crowd roaring when he started signing his signature, when they were going through every single one of those executive orders that he signed on stage, it was just such an indication of how excited people were, of how ready we were for change. Literally, people had been waiting outside the arena for 24 hours, standing in the freezing cold in Washington, D.C. to get inside, waited all day long while all the inauguration things were happening inside the Capitol, just to see this man in person and to watch these executive orders be signed. The energy was unreal. He stayed on stage for a while and did what you would normally be doing in the Oval Office, but brought his fans, brought his voters into it. It was just like an incredible way to start this second term. And even though he did this on stage at the Capital One Arena in DC, I believe that's what it's called, this wasn't unlike what happened in 2016. Because in 2016, in Trump's first term, he also signed a bunch of executive orders, and all the libs freaked out. The media freaked out. They're like, oh my God, he's abusing his power. He's a fascist. This is so awful. Interestingly, this time around, they're kind of quieter. I think maybe they're used to it. But even though that was the case, there are a lot of things that are different this time around. It's almost 10 years later. This is a new Trump. And I brought my friend Bridget Fatesi, who is the host of Dumpster Fire, onto the show to talk about this. And this was one of the first things she brought out, how different this is and how it's so much better. Take a listen.
I've been joking for a couple days about how this is one of those things where, as a like woman online who reads all those platitudes, you're like, rejection is God's protection, Trump. Like this rejection that you had in 2020, see, he was protecting you.
And listen, I completely agree with her. It's like another one of those platitudes like, what is made for you won't miss you, Trump. Like, you were made to be president again. It just wasn't in 2020. You had to take a few years off. You had to learn, you had to reflect and come back stronger in 2024, kick it all off in 2025. And she is absolutely right. He so desperately needed that time, in my opinion, to watch and to learn and to get angry about the things that Biden was doing and to prepare. I mean, guys, he was so much more prepared going into the second term, as Bridget said.
He seems a lot more organized. He had time. You know, he doesn't seem like the president that was like, I won. I feel like in 2016, he was just like, I can't believe I won. And now he feels like he's had 4 years. I actually think that was probably a huge blessing in disguise. I think this is where preparation came in handy for them. They've had lawyers looking at this stuff. They know what will be fought. They know what they can fight.
And not to get ahead of myself, but a great example of this preparedness is that right off the bat, people, and I mean, people being the labor unions and the labor boards, immediately started suing Trump for firing all of these federal employees. He was like, I am clearinghouse. I'm getting rid of a bunch of these lazy people that are doing nothing but spending taxpayer dollars, immediately started firing them. He got sued literally on day one. But just last week, a federal judge came in and said, actually, guys, this is legal. I can't stop him from doing this. You can be angry all you want. You can file lawsuits in little district courts and get angry at him and just keep suing him, but I can't stop him. Just read this headline. Trump can continue mass firings despite disruption and chaos, U.S. judge rules. And of course, they had to add in that disruption and chaos into the headline just to really let everybody know what they think about all of this, of getting rid of government bloat. But truly, I think that that's just a great example of this preparedness because his lawyers knew going into this what would stand and what wouldn't. They were not flying by the seat of their pants. They had months to prepare. And one of the ways that Trump prepared that was just so interesting to me that I started noticing back in the fall was that Trump had his own transition team. Many of you guys might know that, some of you guys might not, but his team started working as early as March of 2024. And then they officially convened and started working in August of 2024, which again is still months ahead of when a president-elect would start working. This man was like, yeah, I'm going to win. This is going to be great. Even if I don't win, I'm going to be prepared in the off chance that I am. Now, the other thing that he did that was completely different is that he did not just accept the transition team from the US government. He picked his own people and he brought his own funding. Here are a couple headlines about that. Trump is breaking from past presidents on the Presidential Transition Act. What is it? Another headline reads, Trump has still not signed critical transition agreements allowing access to agencies. I wonder why he didn't want to give access to government agencies as his team was prepping. Now, one of the things that he did was he refused to sign the General Services Agreement that he did sign in 2016, another big shift from his first term. And this traditional path would have offered him $7.2 million to pay this transition team, to get everybody ready and to get things in order, to get these executive orders ready for day one. But that $7.2 million, obviously because it's the US government, comes with a lot of strings attached that Trump did not want to touch. So he did not sign it. He didn't accept the money, and instead, he brought in the money privately. When we donated money, when I was buying my MAGA hats and giving donations to Trump throughout the campaign, some of that money was going towards funding this private transition team. And that is how he kept the government out of his business and how he was able to prepare for so many months leading up to winning on November 5th. If you are anything like me, then I am sure you think that this transition into power has just been incredible to watch. It's been incredible to see him prepare for so many months, to prepare for January 20th. And I think he wants us to revel in all of this. And that is one thing that has not changed in 2016. Like, that is still the same Trump, as Bridget said later on in our interview.
He did have a lot of executive orders because I do remember all the pomp and circumstance around him signing the executive orders, even in 2016. They seemed kind of ridiculous at the time. This guy, he is an entertainer. He understands American entertainment more than anything. And it's our greatest export probably. And he knows he truly is a master of drama and entertainment. The first administration, it felt like he was really riding on that. This one feels like they're using Trump's ability to its maximum capacity as an entertainer, but it actually feels like it's supported by something more substantial.
I mean, I just completely agree. The man has not stopped. He has not slowed down in the slightest. I mean, on Inauguration Day, I think that he signed 20 executive orders, which was more than any president in recent history, possibly even more than any president in history. And he has just been signing tens upon tens more, many of which are aiming at slashing government regulations. Like, he is using these executive orders to slash government, to hopefully make our lives better, to make our lives more affordable, to make it easier to run a small business or to start a family. He is getting rid of government bloat that impacts all of our daily lives. On day one, for example, one of his executive orders was to freeze all pending federal government regulations. So any regulation that was in the process of reaching us, he said, no, we're not going to do this. You're not going to slide this in on my watch. We're freezing everything, and I want to see exactly what you're doing, and my team will review. He also brought something back from his first term, which was a favorite policy of mine. It is the 1 in, 2 out rule, which means that if you want to introduce one new regulation for government or American people or small businesses, you need to eliminate 2. So we started with that. But then, just a couple of days later, he added on that. He said, no, this is not 2016 Trump, this is 2025 Trump. He took it further with a 10-to-1 process, that if you want to introduce one, you have to get rid of 10. That is insane. That is unprecedented. Hopefully will work out in our favor. He also put agencies like the FTC and the SEC under White House oversight, and these are agencies that are usually completely independent, meaning that they can just regulate to high heaven, they can do whatever they want. And Trump said, no. You are going to be held accountable now. I'm going to see what you're doing. You are coming under me now, so that was a huge thing. And I mean, just yesterday, he did another executive order aimed at slashing regulations. This one was about the timber agency. And this executive order would terminate all regulations and processes that delay the production of timber, lumber, paper, bioenergy, and other wood products. He said, and I quote, "The United States has an abundance of timber resources that are more than adequate to meet our domestic timber production needs, but heavy-handed federal policies have prevented full utilization of these resources and made us reliant on foreign producers," which of course is not just in the timber industry. We're dealing with that everywhere. So this is just one example of what he's doing to hopefully, again, make things more affordable, bring things back onto American soil, which will only benefit us and our economy. These are all incredibly positive things that he's doing. And you would think that an executive order like this is something that everyone could get behind because it's going to make all of our lives better. But thanks to my friends at Ground News, I quickly realized that was not the case at all. Now, if you guys didn't know, Ground News cuts through the noise with an unbiased perspective and shows you both sides of every story, of every executive order, prioritizing honesty over everything. Their unique technology allows users to compare how different sides of corporate media are reporting on a story, making sure that you see all sides and truly stay informed about what's going on in the world. And from my perspective as a creator who does this kind of show, they make sure that I stay on top of the stories that I'm covering for you guys so that I can bring you the latest and most honest updates. I mean, like with this story, I wanted all the latest information about Trump's executive orders, especially the more recent ones that, haven't had enough time in the news cycle, like this directive about timber production, and I knew that Ground News would have the clearest and most well-rounded breakdown of what Trump was actually doing. But it doesn't stop there. Ground News also has a blind spot feed that brings you the stories that have gotten little to no coverage on one side of the political aisle or another, making sure that you always stay informed instead of letting big tech or their algorithms decide what you see. So if you are ready to truly break free from media bias and stay informed with honest, transparent news consumption, now is the time to join Ground News. And when you go to groundnews.com/Brett or scan the QR code on the screen, you can get the same premium plan that I use, but for nearly half the price. That is groundnews.com/Brett if you want unbiased news and to hold the media accountable for only $5 a month. You can stay on top of the insanity that's happening, the good insanity that's happening literally every single day. Now, in addition to slashing regulations and trying to make government smaller, which I think we can all get behind, another huge thing that Trump has been attacking is the immigration crisis. This is something that he ran on. This was like priority 2 behind the economy in his campaign. We as voters gave him a mandate to fix this problem because it has been so insane. And so on day 1, he declared a national emergency at the border. And as of last week, Trump announced that in his first full month being in office, we now have the lowest border crossings in history. This is his post from Truth Social. He said, "The month of February, my first full month in office, had the lowest number of illegal immigrants trying to enter our country in history by far." In history, which is insane. There were only 8,326 apprehensions of illegals by Border Patrol at the U.S.-Mexico border, all of whom were quickly ejected from our nation or, when necessary, prosecuted for crimes against the United States of America. This means that very few people came. The invasion of our country is over. In comparison, and this is truly insane, under Joe Biden, there were 300,000 illegals crossing in 1 month, and virtually all of them were released into our country. Thanks to Trump administration policies, the border is closed to all illegal immigrants. Anyone who tries to illegally enter the USA will face significant criminal penalties and immediate deportation. And guys, if you've been following the news, even in the slightest, I'm sure that you have seen that these deportations have people riled up. This is like the most emotional issue of our time right now. It's like people aren't even thinking about the LGBTQ community or transgenderism or anything that made them angry over the last 4 years. This is now issue number 1 that everybody is crying about because, again, on day 1, he declared a national emergency, which meant that troops were deployed, the National Guard was deployed to help with deportations, literally started on day 1. Tom Homan got moving. He and Kristi Noem were literally suited up in police ice vests, going through the cities, plucking criminals off the streets. There were these insane videos of violent criminals who were being shoved into cars, and they were like, "I'll be back. I deserve to be here." And Tom Homan was like, "Yeah, F you. No, sorry, you are going home, and they blasted them all over the news. Now, speaking of those violent criminals, that brings me to another thing that Trump did. He declared that cartels are now foreign terrorist organizations. I don't know why we didn't have that before, but that broadened the government's authority to deport people involved in those kind of operations. He also did a mass deportation executive order. So really, he is clearing house in the United States. And again, like I said, it sparked meltdowns all over social media and in the news. And I expected that. Like, I was a bit worried about this. Not that I didn't think that it was a good thing, because obviously, objectively, clearing house in the United States, especially after 300,000 people coming over in 1 month under Joe Biden, like, this is a very good thing. But I expected the media meltdown. I was nervous for it. I was like, people are going to turn on him. They're not going to like this. Because I think most of us knew that this was not going to be pretty. However, some seem to be surprised, as Bridget pointed out.
I said they're not going to be comfortable when the deportations start. When they actually, these are not people who are necessarily that political, and I'm not sure they're that familiar with the things this administration wanted to carry out. And I bet there is a lot of buyer remorse from people who maybe just thought that this would be a center left kind of presidency, because they did appeal to the podcast, the independents, the moderates. And if you were one of those people who isn't really that invested in politics and policy and doesn't even pay attention to it at all, you might have been pretty surprised when ICE started knocking on doors in your neighborhood. It is that whole, like, did you think this was just vibes and papers? Did you think that they were actually not going to do anything?
I mean, I don't know if you guys have been on social media in the last month, but it has been crazy. Like, people have been posting videos of their family members, like their dad who came to this country 30 years ago, and they film a video of him going through his citizen exam and his citizenship ceremony. They're like, he could be deported. Are you dumb? Like, literally, are you dumb? You just posted a video of him waving his cute little flag, passing his citizenship exam, and you're saying he could be deported. Trump doesn't care about your grandfather or your dad who came in 30 years ago and is now an American citizen. That is not who is being deported. We are deporting people who are literally currently here illegally. Like, you do not even understand the situation. There are also parents that are doing the classic lib thing where they're like, my child came to me in the middle of the night and knocked on my door and was like, Mommy, they're gonna pick up kids from my class and they're gonna deport them all, and I just don't even know what to tell her. We are deporting the drug cartels out of the streets. That should be something that we are all excited about. I mean, it's just been horrible. Like, there was literally a story 2 weeks ago now that came out through the New York Post, and they were talking about this young girl in Texas, this 11-year-old, who had killed herself. And the media painted it to be about deportations, about immigration. They said she had been bullied over her immigration status. She was a legal immigrant. She was an American citizen. And apparently, she had possibly overheard comments on the bus talking about immigration, and they said, oh, this is the reason why now Trump is killing children. Okay, it just came out 3 days later that she was being sexually abused, that it wasn't actually about immigration at all, but the media took that tiny little sliver of a story and ran with it and utilized this girl's death, this 11-year-old girl's death, to push a narrative that Trump was now a child murderer because he was deporting children. Again, guys, these are not legal, law-abiding citizens that are getting deported, no matter what you see on TikTok. Right now, what they are dealing with, they are violent criminals, as Kristi Noem pointed out right here.
Here we have a guy named Gonzalez, who's been convicted of sodomy of children less than 13 years of age. He has been sentenced to prison, but he is out of our country now, thanks to President Trump. Another guy here who is arrested and has been removed, but he was convicted for possession of distributing child porn.
Are you gonna cry about that on TikTok? Are we gonna have videos sobbing Selena Gomez of these people leaving our country? No, this is objectively a good thing. Objectively, we should not want these people to be in our country. And you know what? To make this issue even more simple for people who cannot understand this, these people are all criminals point blank, because guess what? They came here illegally, as Caroline Leavitt put it in a press conference.
Caroline, on immigration. Of the 3,500 arrests ICE has made so far since President Trump came back into office, can you just tell us the numbers? How many have a criminal record versus those who are just in the country illegally?
All of them, because they illegally broke our nation's laws, and therefore they are criminals as far as this administration goes.
Mic drop moment. Like, that is the perfect time for that meme where, like, the sunglasses go on and it's like the Thug Life song. This response is the perfect moment for that. And for any children who are watching this unfold on social media or on the news, or are being, fed lies from TikTok or their teachers or their friends, parents, do not make a video crying on TikTok. No, realize that this is an excellent opportunity to not instill fear in your children, but to teach a very simple, basic lesson about law and order, about things that are legal and not illegal, about what happens to people when objectively they break the law. That is something that you must teach your children at some point. This is the real world. This is reality. It is not a bad thing to teach them that, and it does not need to be scary, especially when what you are parroting on social media, what your kids are allegedly seeing, is not actually happening. So that right there kind of covers the issue of immigration. Again, I think that it is the most emotional part of Trump's first month. It is the thing that most people have hated about his first month. Everything else has kind of fallen to the wayside. I think it hasn't gotten as much media attention. Like, Trump did 4 executive orders dealing with the transgender community, and it barely got an uproar, which genuinely, shocked me. On day 1, he did an executive order establishing 2 genders, which I don't even know why we had to do that, but it is hysterical and epic that he did on day 1. He said that there is man, there is woman. He even slipped in there that life begins at conception, the gender begins at conception, that you cannot distort this or change it, that there is no third gender. He kept it very, very simple. He also did an executive order barring transgender individuals from serving in the military, which again, should not be controversial in the slightest. And maybe people are finally realizing that. Maybe that is why there was not a media uproar, because they've realized this is absurd. If you are bipolar, you cannot serve in the military. If you have major depressive disorder, you cannot serve. If you have anxiety or OCD, you cannot serve. So why do you think somebody with gender dysphoria should be able to serve? But why? Because it's the virtuous thing to do? Because we have to support this? No, it literally does not make sense. You cannot serve if you have to take any kind of medication, whether it be for a physical health condition or a mental health condition. So why should somebody who has to take regular hormones in order to stay the gender that they are pretending that they are? So why should these individuals be allowed to serve next to men and women who had to fit through such strict parameters in order to even enlist? Again, it makes no sense. Now, the third thing that he did was an executive order barring gender-affirming care for kids under the age of 19. I think this is the one that got the most media attention. This one was called Protecting Children from Chemical and Surgical Mutilation. And I think some people were confused, but this does not end gender-affirming care for children just point blank, but it bars federal funding for any of these surgeries. It bars federal funding and grants for research and experiments for med schools and hospitals. And it also requires the Secretary of the HHS, which is now Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to try to stop this on a whole and to end this in our country. So it hasn't been ended right now, but he's basically saying that the federal government will not be involved in this mutilation. Now, the 4th executive order about transgenderism was keeping men out of women's sports. And this was the one that I think most people were celebrating. It was an incredible sight to behold. Out of all of the executive orders, even going back to day 1 on January 20th, when he was sitting on that stage surrounded by cheers, when he was repealing those 78 Biden executive orders, this was still the best sight. Just watch Trump signing this executive order.
You want to do this? Watch what I do, and then I'm going to give you some pens, okay? You ready? What a nice picture this is, huh, Governor? You ready? We'll do a good job. Wait, let me press that.
And the best part was they were asking all of these young girls to stand back. Because obviously he's Trump. People have tried to kill him. Secret Service was like, everybody needs to stand back. Nobody can get close to him. And Trump looked around at this room of 100+ young women, ranging from ages 5, maybe even younger, to women like Riley Gaines, to women who had competed, in sports 20 years ago. All these women were surrounding him. And he said, they're not going to hurt me. And he said, Secret Service, you don't have to be worried about them. He invited all of them to crowd around the table. And now you have this incredible image. It is just so, so perfect. But yeah, this is him signing the order. And it's just awesome. I literally am tearing up thinking about it. This was such an amazing day. That is a picture for the Smithsonian. That video is a picture. There are about 4 different screen grabs in that could hang in a museum. It was truly remarkable. And guys, that day, that exact same day, the president of the NCAA made a statement saying that they would be working to align their policies with this new executive order, and saying that this actually did, even though people were saying that this was transphobic, they were actually thanking him, saying that this offered some much needed clarity on the issue. That executive order was signed on Wednesday afternoon. The statement from the NCAA was made on Wednesday afternoon, and by Thursday afternoon, the transgender policy at the NCAA had been updated. NCAA announces transgender student athlete participation policy change, and NBC wrote about it that same day and said, by Thursday afternoon, the association announced an update to its transgender student-athlete policy. NCAA women's sports will be restricted to students assigned female at birth. This national standard brings much-needed clarity as we modernize college sports for today's student-athletes. And there were people that were still, of course, losing their minds over this on social media. Again, nothing compared to the outrage over immigration and the deportations, but I mean, still, it was an issue that people care a lot about. But I mean, like, come on. Like, according to recent Gallup polls from the last couple of years, this is something that 70% of Americans want. Trump is representing the people by doing this. And I think it's so great that when you look at the social media landscape, yeah, there were a few angry tweets here and there. Yes, you had NBC writing a little heated passive-aggressive article about it, but they really couldn't say much because, again, this is what the voters overwhelmingly wanted. Now, you guys all know that I am a big advocate for our Second Amendment rights, and I believe in being prepared and being responsible when it comes to firearms. But let's be honest, shooting can be loud and sometimes uncomfortable, and that is why I want to tell you about my friends over at Silencer Shop. Yes, silencers are totally legal before you ask, and Silencer Shop makes getting one easier than ever. They offer the largest selection of top brand suppressors that make your shooting experience quieter, safer, and way more enjoyable. So whether you are hitting the range or out hunting, a suppressor can make a world of difference for your experience. And don't worry about the paperwork. That was the thing that I was most intimidated by. They've got you covered. Silencer Shop simplifies the entire process, making it hassle-free so that you can get your suppressor from the comfort of your own home. I don't have to leave this chair to get my own suppressor. Plus, approvals are coming back faster than ever, so there is no better time to get started. But guys, here's the best part. This is why I love working with this group. Silencer Shop isn't just about selling suppressors to consumers. They are fighting the good fight for our Second Amendment rights. In these unpredictable times, it is crucial to support companies that actually stand up for the Second Amendment, which is what they're doing. Silencer Shop is actively lobbying, they are battling in courtrooms, they are pushing back against anti-gun legislation nationwide. So if you want to not only enhance your shooting experience, but also support a company that is fighting for our rights, head on over to Silencer Shop to get started today. And trust me, Silencer Shop is the easiest and best way to get your suppressors. Now, in addition to these very serious issues that are very personal to the American people, like men and women's sports and like the economy and immigration, Trump obviously had to have some Trump moments, and he also passed some incredibly funny executive orders. For example, my personal favorite one was the ending of the forced procurement and use of paper straws. Just watch.
Next, this is an executive order relating to the use of paper straws.
Guys, I just want you to watch the man on the right-hand side throughout this entire clip. He is just having the time of his life. Like, this is joy. They said the combo would bring joy. This is bringing joy.
We're going back to plastic straws. These things don't work. I've had them many times, and on occasion they break, they explode. If something's hot, they don't last very long, like a matter of minutes, sometimes a matter of seconds. It's a ridiculous situation. So we're going back to plastic straws. I think it's okay.
You just have to wait. It gets better at the end.
And I don't think that plastic's going to affect a shark very much as they're munching their way through the ocean. Okay.
It's so good. If nothing else, this man provides me comedy every single day. Like, I saw a tweet earlier and somebody was saying, damn it, this man is a neo-Nazi fascist, but damn it, he's so freaking funny. Yes! Like, you can't look away. You can't not love him slightly, even if you don't like his policies, because he's a character. That's what Bridget was saying at the top of this episode. Like, he gets the pomp and circumstance. He is an entertainer. At the end of the day, he knows how to entertain us. He knows how to keep people's attention, and by golly, he has mine. Now, in addition to the paper straw executive order, another funny one that he did was restoring American names to American greatness, which was basically eliminating a lot of the wokeness from American names. Like if Biden had added equity or something like that to a federal agency or anything that was, overseen by the federal government. Mount McKinley is a great example of that. That was Mount Denali in Alaska, but he restored it to the original name of Mount McKinley. So that goes under that executive order. He also signed an executive order to create a commission to throw America the biggest 250th birthday celebration for 4th of July. He was like, we're gonna have the biggest, best birthday party of all time. So we signed an executive order about that specifically. He also, and this might be my favorite one, he also signed an executive order making English the official language of the United States, which, if you know Trump, he has been talking about this for years. Watch this clip from a debate many years ago now.
This is a country where we speak English, not Spanish.
Jeb Bush just doesn't even know what to say about that. He's got no response whatsoever. But listen, Trump's right. And years later, he finally made it. He finally signed that executive order. So hopefully, guys, that gives you a little recap on all of these executive orders. And those last couple were obviously very funny and kind of silly, but Trump really took what the American voters asked of him and he ran through it. I mean, he just ran through walls for us in that first 40 days. He said, I don't care what the media says about me. I don't care what you journalists are saying. I don't care what all of you government employees and you labor unions, I don't care if you sue me. This is the mandate that the American people gave me, and I am going to enact it. Whether it be the economy or immigration or men and women's sports and transgenderism in general or having two genders only, he was going to make it happen, and that is what he did with all of those executive orders. So now we obviously have to ask, what happens next with all of these executive orders? Because if you're thinking critically about the situation, you're thinking, well, the next admin will just unwind it, which in my interview with Bridget, she said that that was her main concern. That's the only thing that she doesn't like about what he did in his first 40 days was her thinking ahead 4 years, 5 years, whenever the next Democrat is in office, thinking, oh, that next president could do what Trump did on his first day and just reverse all of these.
The thing that bothers me the most is that it feels like now every single administration is just going to come in and un-executive order the previous administration, and now it's just back and forth people who will be undoing and redoing these executive orders. So I prefer that Congress would, codify some of these things into law.
Now, thankfully, Bridget and I are not alone in this feeling, and people in government are hearing those concerns. Specifically, Mike Johnson is hearing the concerns, and he made an announcement while on the stage at CPAC saying that he is going to try his hardest to make sure that does not happen by getting as many of these executive orders passed as law so they can be codified as U.S. statutes. Just take a listen.
The president is over 300 executive actions already, and we're going to codify so much of what he's doing so that the next team can't unwind it.
And I love that he says that as if it's so simple, because it's not. That is going to be nearly impossible on a lot of those executive orders, but the fact that they're going to go in there and they're going to try, especially in the next 2 years while we have the majority, that needs to be priority number one for Congress, in my opinion, is to get as many of these done, because again, then these last 40 days are all kind of for nothing. Yeah, we're enjoying it. Yeah, we get tons of viral videos and clips, and we get to laugh with Trump as he's signing in things about paper straws, because if these are not passed into law, if we do not permanently reduce these regulations, get rid of government bloat, we are going to find ourselves in the exact same situation in 4 years, in 8 years, in 12 years. So we need to handle it now. Now, the next thing that I want to cover in this first official month of Trump videos is obviously some of my personal favorite viral moments, because of course it is Trump. There have been some incredible hysterical moments, some of which you have already seen through those executive order signings. But my personal favorites from the last month, these ones that I've been, kind of bookmarking on X and saving for this episode, they have actually been Trump's interactions with people from other countries, specifically those where English is obviously not their first language. First in this lineup is an interaction that he had on February 4th, I believe, and it was an interaction with a reporter during his press conference with Netanyahu. Just take a listen.
Are you able to recognize Taliban?
Just wait.
Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan suffered woman. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from? Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying. But I just say this.
Just wait.
Good luck. Live in peace.
So we can obviously hear, and she's like, what are you going to do for the people of Afghanistan? He's like, good luck. Good luck. Hope it works out for you. Go in peace. Beautiful language. I cannot hear you. But guys, that was not the only time this happened. 10 days later, during a presser with the Prime Minister of India, Trump had the same exact issue.
Mr. President, people in India would be welcoming your decision to extradite Tahabur Rana to...
I can't understand a word he's saying.
It's so great. Like, this is what we all deal with when we call our phone companies. This is what we all deal with when we call any kind of customer service, and Trump is just like us. It's like celebrities, politicians, they're just like us. He's like, I can't understand a freaking word that you are saying. Lastly, the third in this installment is when the president of France, President Macron, came to visit just last week. And Trump was overwhelmed by the beauty of the French language, even though he once again could not understand a damn thing.
That is the most beautiful language. I have no idea what he's saying, but that is the most elegant, beautiful language. Go ahead.
The other part of this interaction that I just adore is the power move of Macron is trying to speak, and Trump reaches over, grabs his hand, like, shut up, I'm speaking. Like, no, I've heard enough. Beautiful, beautiful language, can't understand a word, and he just grabs his hand and he's like, no, let's sit down now. I mean, it is such a power play. Everything he does, from his handshake handshakes to this. It is so intentional. But guys, all three of those videos, I just want you to think, what executive order ties in to those videos? That is why this is so funny to me. Because remember, just a couple of days ago, just like 2 days before I'm sitting here filming this video, Trump signed that order, making English the official language of the United States. This was signed on March 1st, and obviously, this does not impact accents in the slightest. He's not saying that you can't be here if you do not speak English perfectly, but it's so funny to think of him going through all three of those interactions, sitting through all those press conferences, being like, I can't understand a damn word anybody's saying. I'm gonna fix this right here and right now. I wanna hear English. And so he made an executive order just about that. It's just so great. Now, the second to last thing that we need to cover, now I know I've kind of taken you on this like wild ride of the last 40 days, but if we want to touch on the funniest moments, the most important moments of the first month of the second Trump admin, we cannot ignore what happened just last week in the Oval Office with J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, and President Zelenskyy from Ukraine. And I'm sure that you guys have seen most of the viral clips by now. If you spent any time on social media, you may have even seen some of the memes that came out. Just like this one, which is my personal favorite.
Right now, not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a...
The caption says, me right before I play my last Uno card on family game night. There have just been so many incredible memes that have been making me laugh for the last, 72 hours, but that moment and that meeting was so much more important than just some viral clips. And if you didn't watch the entire 45-minute recorded conversation, then I just want to take a moment to set the scene for you, because the media is painting this in a certain light, obviously, and we're seeing all the funny memes, but again, this is so much bigger. So this afternoon, this event, this meeting with Zelenskyy actually started out perfectly. They were on great terms. Trump welcomed him to DC and to the White House. Trump actually complimented Zelenskyy on not wearing the same army green costume that he's wearing for 3 years, but obviously changing up his wardrobe. It's so friendly. I mean, it's a bit of trolling. He's like, look, he's not wearing the same shirt, but it's like friendly. They're laughing, they're smiling, they're taking pictures together. Everything seems normal. And from there, when they actually sat down in the Oval Office to have this meeting with Zelenskyy and Trump and J.D. Vance, it started out peacefully. Like, Trump continued to crack jokes and kind of do like nudge nudge. He was smiling, he was laughing, he was talking about peace. He was trying to have a productive conversation about peace in Ukraine with Russia. He was even complimenting Zelenskyy for things that he had done over the last 3 years. But Zelenskyy could not let this continue to be a peaceful conversation, and he would not stop trying to make the entire conversation about Putin. Like, literally every 30 seconds, well, Putin did this, well, Putin did this. And obviously, he's fighting Putin right now, but that was not what Trump wanted to talk about. And he also would not let up talking about America pledging a security guarantee and a lot more money for Ukraine. And it just became evident after like 10 or 15 minutes, somewhere in that range, that the two sides were just speaking completely different languages. Not even literally, but figuratively. Like, they wanted very different things. Trump and J.D. Vance were here to talk about peace and productivity and how to move forward from this, and Zelenskyy was like, no, I need you to fight with me and fight for me. I want to wipe this man off the face of the earth. I hate Putin, literally just saying that. And so by then, he started getting kind of riled up, and he started interrupting Trump consistently until Trump finally had enough and started to call him out for this, Putin derangement syndrome and a lack of interest in obvious peace and productivity and diplomacy. And that is when J.D. Vance jumped in, and that is when fireworks really started. And it wasn't an ambush of any kind. And that is how the media is trying to paint this. So if you've been on NBC, if you've been reading, AP News, if you've been reading CNN, they will have said, oh, this was so awful, poor Zelenskyy, why would they do this to him? It was an ambush. It was not that at all. It was supposed to be peaceful and productive. And Zelenskyy himself took the first step to make this interaction more hostile, and Trump was just not going to deal with it. And I mean, Trump, of course, could have just rolled over like Biden did and like many other world leaders have gone, okay, whatever you want, I'll sign another check. But Trump is Trump. He's not going to do that. And so it just kept getting more and more angry, more and more hostile. And the last 5 minutes were where it really became entertaining. And somewhere in the last 5 minutes, I'm sure, is what you've seen on social media, but I want to show you my two favorite clips. This might be my favorite one.
You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. Yeah, you're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
Oh, that moment right there that is when it started to spiral. Have you even said thank you once? But in the minute prior to that, obviously, Trump is getting enraged. He is raising his voice. He's saying things that I think a lot of us have wanted to say for the last couple of years. Like, you need all of us. And JD Vance is like, yeah, you need all of us, and you're being kind of an ungrateful brat in the Oval Office in front of two people that are trying to help you, and I am not going to stand for it. And so from there, from JD Vance calling him disrespectful, it only got better, and I seriously have never felt better. As I was watching this clip, I've never felt better about having these two men in charge leading us on a global stage. Like, the fathers are back in charge, the adults are in the room. Take a listen to this last clip.
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country is in big trouble. Wait a minute. No, you've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone.
You haven't been alone. We gave you, through this stupid president, $350 billion. We gave you military equipment, and your men are brave, but they had to use our military.
You can see Trump flip in this clip. It's like with every interaction, it just gets more and more intense. And I think the final kicker was Zelenskyy saying, "We've done it all alone." And Trump was like, "The hell you have? Absolutely not. We have been paying. Yes, you've been fighting, but you haven't done it alone." And it's offensive for you to sit here in front of the president of the United States, in front of the vice president, in front of an army of press filming you and say that you've had to fight it all along when you literally haven't. The United States, all of Europe, everybody has been contributing. And America and Donald Trump is fed up. He is done. And I also love in this clip, I love that it showed us that Trump and JD Vance are a united front. That's why I wanted to start the clip there where he goes, he was not speaking loudly, because Trump didn't leave JD Vance out there to just fend for himself. He also didn't have to do all of the talking. He has a partner now, a sparring partner, somebody who can be his backup or even just be on the front lines with him. Like with Pence, he was nowhere to be seen. Like, I don't even know if I heard the man talk once during the first presidency. And Kamala during the Biden years was off, drunkenly giving speeches, doing whatever the hell she was doing, posing for covers of Vogue. But JD Vance and Trump are totally different. They are a team. They're showing us that they're a team, and they're also showing us how much Trump clearly respects JD Vance. The fact that he is sitting there right next to Trump, that he lets him speak, that he goes to bat for him when he feels like JD Vance is being disrespected. And I think that this also points to another change in Trump's demeanor from the last few years, like another difference between 2016 Trump and 2025 Trump, or a change in his psyche, as Bridget put it. We were talking about the figures working alongside Trump, and she said, you know what? I think something has changed in his psyche by the way that he interacts with these figures. Just take a listen.
Weirdly, for Trump, he doesn't seem to care. He seems to be okay with it. My theory is that he did get whatever psychic income or whatever psychic validation he needed from this win because he won so handedly and the popular vote. So it did soothe something in his psyche that he was craving.
Now, to kind of round out this more recent story for you guys, of course, like I've mentioned before, the media obviously called Trump and JD Vance mean and rude and hurtful and like they were fascists for going after poor little Zelenskyy, that this was an ambush. But obviously, you guys have now gotten the entire story. You have probably watched the clips. If you have the time, go watch that entire 45-minute interview. It is fascinating. It is crazy. And obviously, you will see that that ambush did not happen. But guys, what was even crazier than our American media's response was watching what was happening in Europe, because almost instantaneously, everyone in Europe, all the European leaders, just fell into line and started tweeting as they should in support of Ukraine, in support of Zelenskyy, and against America after this awful ambush. Just listen to these tweets. Your dignity honors the bravery of the Ukrainian people. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. You are never alone, dear President Zelenskyy. We will continue working with you for a just and lasting peace. Here's another one. Your dignity honors the bravery of the Ukrainian people. Be strong, be brave, be fearless. Oh, that kind of sounds like what we just read. You are never alone, dear President. We will continue working with you for a just and lasting peace. Your dignity honors the bravery. It goes on and on and on. This was tweeted 4 times, possibly even more. And those 4 that I just showed you that I screenshotted, those are from the 2 presidents of the European Union, the president of the European Parliament, and the EVP of the European Commission. Now, better yet, even better than the European Commission and the European Union, you need to look at these tweets from the leaders of all of the European countries. Like, guys, I don't even know if you'll be able to see all of these because there's so many. Dear Zelenskyy, dear Ukrainian friends, you are not alone. Ukraine is not alone. Germany, along with our European allies, stands united against Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine on the side side of the world. Canada stands with Ukraine. Iceland stands with Ukraine. I mean, guys, there are so many of these. All of these countries, from Poland to Germany to the Czech Republic to Slovenia to Latvia to Luxembourg to Spain, Sweden, Portugal, Netherlands, Iceland. They all made similar tweets. Again, I can't even fit these into one screenshot. I mean, it's just laughable. Like, I'm laughing thinking about virtue signaling, and like tweeting infographics has made its way to geopolitics when we are on the brink of World War III, and this is what world leaders are doing. Oh, I'm so sorry you got ambushed by Donald Trump. And guys, what made this even better, and I feel like I keep saying like, this is even funnier, but truly, so you're seeing all of these posts. Zelenskyy went in and retweeted every single one of them and said, thank you for your support. Oh, thank you for your support. Literally every single one. Go to his Twitter. Go to his, sorry, I have to call it X now. Go to his X, scroll through his profile. You will see every single one. It is truly crazy. Like, guys, if you all support Zelenskyy in Ukraine that much, which is fine, that's totally your prerogative to support him, then you can give Zelenskyy the security guarantee that he so desperately says he needs in order to sign this peace deal. And guess what, guys? You can afford to. This article just came out a couple of days ago. Europe can afford to defend itself without the US, but needs more coordination, study says. You can do it. You don't need our help. So stop getting angry at us for putting our foot down and start writing those checks. Keep on writing those checks. You've already given a lot of money. The European countries, when you look at GDP, they've actually given more money than the United States, not in terms of actual cash, but in terms of, proportion to their economy and their population. So keep going if it's that important to you. But you know what? It seems like they don't want to do that. It seems like they're also tired, but they don't want to be the ones to put down their foot and say no, like we just watched Donald Trump do. In fact, people on social media from around the world have been making posts, literally lamenting about the US not doing enough for them now. Like, look at this one from LinkedIn. This guy says, I have the utmost respect for President Zelenskyy for remaining true to his principles in this situation, not to sell out his country and resources for a bad deal without any security guarantees, and not give in to the pressure from the American administration requires more courage than you can imagine. This is where it gets good. The make a deal or we're out front shown yesterday at the White House makes it clear, the clearest that it ever could, that Europe needs to ensure its own security, economy, and unity. Yes! Literally yes! Were you thinking that you didn't have to do that? Were you expecting that the United States was just going to come in and protect you and be the world's police forever? That's unsustainable. We don't want to do that. We don't want to fund it. We have our own problems at home that we need to address before we can go in and fix your economy and your security and to make you unified. That is not our responsibility. Like, I read this LinkedIn post and I just think of the SpongeBob meme that's like the world's tiniest violin. Yes, actually, you have to think about your country's own security. We're not going to do that for you. But anyway, all jokes aside and back to the point, even though these European countries are still wanting to pledge support and possibly money for Ukraine, maybe they will end up doing the security guarantee, Trump is obviously putting his foot down for Americans. And his post that he put out following the meeting, it literally sounded like a father putting a temper tantrumy child into timeout, which I personally loved. This is what he put on Truth Social. He said, we had a very meaningful meeting in the White House today. Much was learned that could never be understood without conversation under such fire and pressure. It is amazing what comes out through emotion, and I have determined that President Zelenskyy is not ready for peace, capital P, if America is involved, because he feels our involvement gives him a big advantage in negotiations. I don't want advantage, I want peace. He disrespected the United States of America and its cherished Oval Office. He can come back when he is ready for peace. Mic drop. Daddy's home. I tweeted this. I was like, this literally sounds like I am 6 years old. And my mom was like, you can go to your room and you can come back when you've changed your attitude. I mean, honestly, I shouldn't even say that's what she said when I was 6 years old. She was doing that to me when I was 17 years old. That is what parents do. That is what Trump is doing in this moment. And of course, the media took issue with this, like they take issue with everything he does, but that's to be expected. 10 years in, we understand that that's going to happen. And unlike Biden, Trump will actually face these critics. Trump will actually face the press head on. And it does seem like this time around, he kind of enjoys it more. Like, he knows what to expect. He's going into it intentionally. He's kind of trolling them, and he knows how to handle them, as Bridget mentioned in our interview.
He still seems to know how to kind of effectively be the troll in chief and troll all of the media. There was an entire 4-year Biden administration where the media basically covered for the fact that this guy was not really capable of leading. And now we're supposed to think these are so serious people who need to be taken seriously. And I respect a lot of journalists who do real journalism, but I feel like at this point, at the very tops of our journalist ecosystem that has been abandoned.
Now, speaking of these interactions with the press, another thing to note about his first 40 days in office, the first full month in office, is that in this first month, he took a whopping 1,009 questions from the press. I mean, guys, in this first month alone, he has almost taken as many questions as Biden did allegedly in his entire term. Allegedly, Biden took anywhere from 1,800, possibly hitting 2,000 questions over the last 4 years. And if Trump keeps this speed up, he will surpass that next month. By the end of March, he will have taken more questions than Biden took after 4 years. But I mean, who's surprised? He was like at the beach for half that time. So obviously he was not answering questions. I mean, Biden gave fewer interviews with the press than his predecessors. He did fewer press conferences than his predecessors. I actually think that he holds the record for the least amount of press conferences in a president's history. He gave fewer informal Q&As, whether that was when he was at the White House or when he was getting off of Air Force One, you name it. And so in comparison, it just makes Trump shine even more. I mean, Trump is truly giving us the most transparent administration in history. He is inviting press into the Oval Office frequently. Caroline Leavitt, the new press secretary, is the youngest press secretary in history. She's absolutely crushing it. And they are even doing these breakdowns on social media to keep you guys informed. I highly recommend following the White House account because these videos are phenomenal. Take a listen.
Let's roll through the biggest and most historic wins in this week's MAGA Minute. On the border, President Trump signed the Laken-Riley Act into law. We've seen nearly 95% drop in the number of U.S. Border Patrol encounters on our southern border. And our efforts have been so successful, they've caused the shuttering of migrant shelters and would-be illegal immigrants to return home before even attempting to enter our country.
And this is only half the video. She goes on for another 30 seconds, literally doing a breakdown of what I just did over the last hour, basically, in 1 minute, to keep you guys informed of the number one things that they're doing. And they're not just doing this every month. I think that she is literally doing it every single week, giving you the MAGA Minute updates to keep voters informed. Now, obviously, if you guys know anything about me, if you took anything from this episode, I'm sure that you know by now that obviously, I think all this is great. I'm living my best life under the second Trump administration. I'm having so much fun. I think all of this is just fantastic. I love the tenacity. I love getting straight to business. I love following the mandate that the American voters gave him. I think truly it is all incredible. And I love that he is not pulling punches on any issues, whether that be transgenderism or the economy or dealings with Ukraine. He is putting his foot down. Now, I'm in Gen Z, and I'm having a great time. I love it. But apparently, some of our generation is not as happy. And I'm saying our because I know I have a ton of Gen Z viewers, and I want you guys to know that since coming into office, since 40 days ago, Trump's approval rating has reportedly dropped 40 points to the negative. With Gen Z, Newsweek wrote about this, Donald Trump's Gen Z popularity plunges. That is a huge number. Like unprecedented. And so the question that I want to leave you guys with today to be thinking about, because I do want to do an episode about this, and that question is, why do you think that is? Why do you think his approval rating has dropped 40 points with Gen Z? Now, I obviously have my opinion. I have some theories. I want to do an entire episode about this, but like, do any of you guys have buyer's remorse? Are any of you guys not happy with what I'm happy about? Are any of you guys upset about these executive orders? Like, what in your mind changed as Gen Zers from November when we were all, fired up for MAGA to now? Like, did Gen Z actually think that Trump was just about vibes and papers and driving trash trucks and frying fries at McDonald's, and that now that he's deporting people and firing everybody out of the federal government, you guys don't like it so much? I don't know. I just want to know. I want to figure it out. We're going to do an entire episode about it. Give me your responses and I'll make sure to include them. But all of that aside, the opinions from the rest of our generation, again, I'm having a great time. I feel really hopeful. I feel really fired up. And of course, there are things that I disagree with. Of course, there are things that maybe I want to see differently. There are things that I'm still really excited about that he hasn't done yet, which is totally normal. And so I'm so happy that I got to do this recap for you guys and fill you in. I want to do this more frequently because I've missed talking about him. He is one of my favorite figures in culture. Donald Trump is who made me interested in politics from the beginning. He is a fascinating character, a fascinating man, and I love the fact that he is leading our country once again.